All right, this is the SBC podcast, where every single podcast is a business meeting with a specific purpose and a specific outcome. I do that because I'm an MBA, security license, clients that are worth $50 million and above. All right, so YouTube is working. That was the background. So, anyways, uh, purpose, when you have a purpose, it drives your actions. James is a phenomenal 36 out of 38 weeks profit. So what that means is that 1 week compounds on the other. And then he was out of control about 2 weeks ago, where he's getting big plus money numbers, like if you were getting a horse at 20 to 1, he got 2, 3 of them. And when I looked at my bankroll, my blood pressure went down. I started smiling, laughing, and I had a lot more money than what I had before. So money talks, bullshit walks. We're the only UFC podcast that's transparent for your best interest. And to finish up the intro, what we do is we use sports betting for a high sense of awareness to give you more fight analysis. So even though this is about sports betting and money, James is giving you great fight analysis of what's exactly going on, because like Elon Musk says, you got to, the process is, especially now in modern life, you work to get to the truth. Once you get to the truth, you start predicting outcomes. Once you're consistently predicting outcomes, you're like James, monetizing those outcomes, right? So that's why the predictive markets are getting big. That's why sports betting is increasing and legal in 42 states. We're way ahead of the game. So if you really want insight and you really want to know what you're doing, you have to listen to this podcast. Bottom line. That's why organically, without corporate affiliation, we're the top 7 sports betting podcasts in the state of Florida, top 50 nationwide, and we haven't really gotten rolling yet. We got rolling, will be recognized by everybody. It's the top financial sports betting podcast in the whole world. Thank you, James, for getting us there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to the last pay-per-view card of the year and the last pay-per-view of ESPN, and actually the last pay-per-view in general. Once we move to the
Right.
Paramount slash CBS model, it's not going to be any more pay-per-view. So this is going to be a really important, significant one. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, it's historic. It's the end of an era, but James is in tune that we're going to get ahead of the changes and monetize those changes. What's the first fight we're going to get into, James?
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and we're actually just going to skip the first 2 fights of this card because the odds just simply aren't there for us. Even if we were to pick Mansour Abdul Malik by knockout, singularly by knockout, he still is currently at minus 300 for that. So we're just going to keep it pushing and move on to the next fight. Um, in that one, we've got Ibo Aslan versus Iwo Bartolowski. And Iwo is 6-0, all by finishes. However, this will be his debut fight in the UFC, whereas Ebo is 14-3, all 14 wins by knockouts, but has lost his last 2 by submission and decision. Iwo could have some serious potential here. I'm usually kind of shaky on picking debuters, but Ebo, even though he has an extensive strength of schedule, the majority of it isn't in the UFC. And like I just mentioned, his last 2 did not go his direction. So I think this is a chance for the younger or the debuter here, the fresher guy, to actually get the win here. So we're going to take Iwo to win by knockout or decision at minus 135.
Minus 135 low. James, lights out. He's made me a small fortune this year with his bets, uh, minus 170 all the way to, I think, the best he got me. And I'm like, and it's irrational. We all get irrational. I'm like, why didn't I put more money on it? It was like 445. And I was like, man, I should have put more money in. And I thought about it too. I was like, what James said made a lot of sense. And I think there's a inefficiency in the market because we use business and financial concepts in order to get to the truth to predict outcomes consistently well. And James is so good at what he does. Remember, highest level of probability is 80%. and James is above that when you look at it week to week. So with that level of proficiency, uh, James is an expert, and people have just gotten rich doing this, leveraging and taking advantage of market inefficiencies. And there's different markets going on here. All right, from the sports betting market to the fighting market to the TV market, it's a lot of markets that James can take advantage of it. Bottom line is, we've been making a lot of money with that. So those plus money bets, because James understands market inefficiency means money. What's the next fight we're gonna look at, James?
Up next, we've got Edson Barboza versus Jalen Turner. And Jalen Turner he's actually, despite being the much younger guy, he's coming out of retirement for this fight. And Barboza is much older than him. This is still going to be a tough fight because in his prime, Barboza would have easily destroyed Jalen Turner and probably won, in my opinion. But he is getting up there and he just hasn't been himself in his most recent couple fights. He doesn't have like the same snap or power or even just like conditioning and endurance. He seems like he can crumble a lot easier here. And with Jalen Turner's incredible frame for that division, I think he's going to have like the reach and edge advantage here and the youthful advantage. So we're going to go ahead and take Jalen Turner to win here again by knockout or decision at -165.
Knockout or decision, -165. Love it. What's the next fight we're gonna look at, James?
Up next, we've got Marvin Vettori versus Bruno Ferreira. And this one's going to be really exciting. I like both of these guys a lot. I used to really like Marvin Vettori. His past couple performances have been letting me down. I also really like Bruno Ferreira. He's real powerful. He has some good power, and he can even mix some takedowns now. He's been improving his grappling game. He's had a couple slip ups and stumbles along the way, and he has massive power. This will be a good test for Marvin's chin because Marvin, he has one of the most strongest granite chins in the UFC. Never seen him knocked down, never seen him knocked out. He just has an incredible chin, and Bruno could be the one to finally test it here. We've seen him have some pretty impressive knockouts over some tough opponents, like Dustin Stoltzfus, for example, who Kevin Gastelum couldn't even knock out. Um, I believe he knocked out RoboCop as well, which is pretty difficult to do. So we're going to go ahead and take Bruno here as the underdog at +100 to win the fight.
Plus 100 to win the fight. So plus money bets, what James is great at. You make more money uh, than people that don't know how to do plus money bets. What's the next fight we're gonna look at, James?
Up next, we've got Nazim Sadikov versus Fares Ziam. And again, both these guys are pretty similar stat wise and strength of schedule wise. They're also somewhat similar. This one's difficult because Nazim has some pretty good wins under his belt. But when you look at a lot of his wins, uh, there's the legitimacy comes into play because some of them, like there was multiple instances of cheating in the Nathaniel Wood fight. He seems to be losing a lot, and then he could get like a nasty cut that causes the fight to be called off. So a lot of his wins, it seems like he's barely gotten by. He's gotten like the photo finish, barely scraped it by. Whereas Frezia seems to have a bit more control and dominance, and he's going to have a larger reach advantage here, 6 inches of reach. So I think he'll be able to stay on the outside away from the clinch where Nazim will want it to be. So we're going to go ahead and take Ziam to win here at -170.
-170. Love it. Stacking up the wins. What's the next fight we're gonna look at?
Yeah, up next we've got Macy Barber versus Karine Silva, and this one's real tough because physically it should go to Barber. Barber's a lot bigger and stronger, and so I think she'll be able to kind of like wade through deep waters and keep this one up against the fence and even have a better striking on the feet. Whereas her also size and weight will help her not fall into Karina's submission game. I really used to think Karina was good. Um, she's had a couple not great performances, but also similar with Macy Barber, who is good, and she seems to not be taking things as seriously as she could. She seems to be coasting on her popularity and her past wins. I mean, we saw this in the last time she was supposed to fight, where She had a hard time cutting weight. She had just gotten some cosmetic surgeries, and then she ended up having a seizure right before
Ooh,
she was supposed to walk out and have the fight because of the weight cut was so severe. And so that being said, it makes me really hesitant to pick her here because if you're at that point, how seriously is your head in the game?
right,
That being
right,
said, I think she's just a lot bigger and stronger than Karine, and that's usually how we predict correctly the women's MMA fighters. So we
right.
do need to stick with that plan here and go with Macy Barber, knockout or decision at minus 185.
Knockout or decision minus 185. And I actually have some insight into that. Uh, a UFC fighter should never, women that are in the UFC, if they're going to get cosmetic surgery, they should do it afterwards. And you say, okay, so what makes you an expert in that? I was actually on a jury in a civil case where the women were suing the manufacturer of silicone and different products people do for cosmetic surgery. And they brought in doctors and they explained in detail. They brought in doctors and scientists and they explained in detail how anything that you put in your body that's not natural in your body and it stays there, your body naturally creates antibodies that fight it and create fatigue. So you got something in your body. Let me ask you this, James. You got something in your body that causes you to fatigue. And one of the main things about uh, UFC is stamina. So you have something that's working against your cardio right away, right? So that's insane.
Definitely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah.
So what are the odds on this girl again?
Minus 185, knockout or decision.
Ooh, I almost want to bet the dog on that. Or if you're watching the fight and it goes to the third round, literally because this is such a high-end thing, uh, the dog has maybe the advantage. But you're the expert. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree with that. I think Karine Silva, especially with what you've just mentioned, I wanted to pick her here initially. It's just the size difference is very difficult to deal with in women's MMA. But that could be a very good live betting opportunity because Karine Silva does have very good jujitsu and submissions. Her most impressive wins come from impressive submissions. And so if Macy truly is feeling fatigued, we could see a later round sub.
Love it. Look, this is one of those where you're watching, then we'll give you live betting, which is going to be important tomorrow. Tomorrow's championship, Saturday for college football, and fortunately looking good to be about 70%, 20 grand college football. So there'll be a lot of live betting for the second half. And we'll live bet this UFC fight. What if it extends itself, right? Because uh, the minus 185 has compromised cardio. What's the next fight we're going to look at, James?
Yeah, up next we've got Terrence McKinney versus Chris Duncan. And this one is very interesting because Terrence McKinney is very fast, explosive, and powerful. He is a finish or be finished fighter. So one of these guys most likely is not going to make it to distance. That being said, Chris Duncan is very good. We've actually picked him up multiple times on here, and he has not let us down yet. I think we're going to go ahead and stick with him here because he is very tough. And if he can just survive the early onslaught, as long as he makes it out of that early onslaught, if it leaves the first round, my confidence in him will only build and build. And Terrence McKinney is very knockoutable himself. He's very finishable. So we're going to go ahead and take Chris Duncan by knockout or submission for minus 105 here.
Minus 105. And when James says that minus 105 has more added value. Love it. What's the next fight we're going to look at?
So next one is very similar, but for slightly different reasons. This one's going to be much more of a stylistic matchup of wrestler versus striker, whereas we have Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres. And Grant Dawson is very good. He has very strong wrestling, great submissions, and can even get some ground and pound going at times. However, he does have a chin made of glass. And Manuel Torres, has some pretty strong power in his arms. He's not very technically sound, and he makes a lot of mistakes and has been knocked out himself in times. But the power does worry me here. That being said, over the course of only 3 rounds, I can really see Dawson chain wrestling and getting takedowns in, which will either lead to submission or ground and pound knockout. So, official pick here is Grant Dawson by knockout or submission at -115, but you can't underestimate the power Manuel Torres has, especially with the chin of glass Dawson has. So, a nice hedge could be Manuel Torres by knockout plus 275.
Plus the 25. And we're using arbitrage. We have the Substack, which you get paid to be on a Substack. Code 99 for now. It's going to be $500 lifetime. But I'll explain in detail on the Substack arbitrage, which is what James is using, leveraging. All right. We're leveraging a lot of different financial techniques to make money. When James tells you about a hedge, that's what it means. It's money. What's the next fight we're going to look at, James?
Yeah, up next, we've got Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov. And the odds are crazy for me here. I'm not sure how Jan isn't the favorite. I think that's kind of disrespectful to him and underplaying it. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at that because his strength of schedule is just so much more impressive than Bogdan Guskov is. Bogdan has been on somewhat of a tear recently. Like, for example, if we go to his strength of schedule, he's on not only a winning streak, but a finishing streak of 4, 3 knockouts, 1 submission. He lost his debut fight by submission, and then he has nearly all finishes. Actually, all of his wins are finishes. That being said, he hasn't faced a former champion in Jan Blachowicz, who has an extensive strength of schedule. He has beaten names. I believe he beat Izzy. Even his losses are very impressive. He lost to Alex Pereira and Carlos Olberg, but even watching both of those fights back, I still disagree with those decisions. So in my personal headcanon, he's beaten Alex Pereira, former
Right.
light heavyweight champ. He's beaten Carlos Olberg, who is now the new top contender of the division to most likely fight for the belt next. So he's already beaten these guys. Yes, Bogdan's explosive, but so is Carlos Olberg. So is Alex Pereira. They are literally known for their power and their knockout ability. And Jan Blachowicz was able to shut him down and stay defensive and stay in there. So yes, he is getting older on the older side, but I still think he has what it takes to come out on top here, including being able to mix it up. We're going to take his money line at -110 currently, but the knockout prop of +330 is almost too good not to take as well. That might just be a little side sprinkle, but
Right.
that's a little too good to pass up coming from the Polish power of Jan Blachowicz, especially for someone who is maybe be putting on a little too much of a pedestal in Bogdan Guskov. He not sure he's quite earned that spot yet. I mean, his last win was against Nikita Krylov, and then Billy Alakana, and then Ryan Spann before that. Like, these are not the top level guys that Jan has been through and won, or at least made it very competitive with.
Love it. Love it. And when people see me look away, what I'm doing is I'm placing bets on what uh, James is saying and then comparing the odds. What's the next fight we're going to look at, James?
Up next, we've got Henry Cejudo versus Peyton Talbot. And this one's another crazy matchup. One, it's going to be a stylistic matchup, but it's also going to be a frame matchup where we have Peyton Talbot coming in both 6 inches taller and 6 inches longer in reach than Henry Cejudo. However, Henry Cejudo is former UFC champion and Olympic gold medalist wrestler. He has been on a skid, losing his last 3 fights in a row, all to top level competition, such as current champ Marab, whereas Peyton Talbot hasn't really beaten anyone impressive. Not only has he not beaten anyone impressive, he actually lost the fight against a very old Yaoni Barcelos. And his most recent win, a decision win over Andre Lima, is not that impressive. Andre Lima is kind of like I don't want to call him a bottom feeder, but he kind
Right.
of like hovers around low in the rankings. And it was Talbot clearly won the fight, but it wasn't anything incredibly impressive. Lima was having his moments that were kind of worrying. So that being said, I don't think Cejudo is necessarily the cream of the crop. I'm not saying Cejudo is that good. And I'm not saying Peyton Talbot's just bad. I'm very nervous for this pick. But if Peyton Talbot was
Right.
struggling against the level of guys that he was struggling against, I don't see how we can pick him to win against Henry Cejudo, because to do that, essentially we would have to knock Cejudo out, because Cejudo will mix it up a lot more effectively with wrestling and other crafty veteran tactics. So if it goes to decision, I see it much more likely to go to Cejudo. So if Talbot can't knock him out, we're going to go ahead and take Cejudo's money line at plus 205.
I love that. Money line plus 205. In the previous slide you talked about, it triggered this in me when you look at the patterns. People do things in their best interest, right? So Dana White, the sports book, are going to do things in their best interest. So they're going to get fights wrong on purpose. And nobody better identify that than James. And I think you got two in a row. What's the next fight we're going to look at, James?
Yeah, up next brings us to Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira. And as much as I like Brandon Moreno, he's such a cool guy and he's been in some very great fights. He does really
Right.
seem like he's at the point of his career where he's beginning to slow down. He's not as aggressive. It's it just doesn't it seems like he's lost a little bit of passion for the game. Like we've really seen from what he once was to what he is now is honestly a steep slope, and is not very it's just not very Brandon Moreno. He's not himself here, whereas Tatsuro
Right.
Taira is younger, more on the come up, and seemingly hungrier. He also has a very good and different grappling style. Um, I think this one is most likely going to go to Tyra, and this one is most likely going to go the distance as well. Tatsuro Taira's money line at minus 122, and then him to win by decision is plus 150. And especially if it does go to decision, I could see him getting the win here, especially because he is Japanese. And
Ah,
it seems like UFC is they really want to push representation, because
right.
representation gets more views from worldwide audiences. And so
Right.
that is one thing that they are looking for. So if it's somewhat competitive, I very much think it's going to lean to Tyra.
And there's a business angle to that too. What I figured out is listening in business journals were paramount. One of the main reasons they spent $7 billion, the nepotism baby of Larry Ellison, David Ellison. Uh, his dad said, "Son, I'm going to buy the UFC and Paramount for you." Right. My
Hmm.
dad hasn't bought anything for me in like 30 years, but I digress. And then one of the big reasons they did buy the UFC and spend $7 billion is because of what James said is intuitively on that they want to grow the international audience so they can get international subscriptions to Paramount Plus.
Hmm.
So that's a good reason, right? Money reason to give that person from Japan the decision. If all things are equal. Remember, they don't decide fights or decide football games, but they do put their toe on the scale, and it's not illegal. If you do something purposely wrong that makes the league money, you're taking care of your fiduciary responsibility, which is taking care of your customer. It might be illegal, and it might be immoral, it might be wrong, it might lose you money. It might be counterintuitive, but it's not illegal. They're not going to get prosecuted from it, but they are going to profit from it. What's the next fight we're going to look at, James?
Yeah, up next brings us to the co-main event. So I'll go ahead and set the stage for this one.
Nice. So you get on the Substack, it's $12.99 a month, $500 lifetime subscription, and you get paid for being on there. So all you do is pay the $12.99 and then put more money on what James is telling you to pick, and you're making your money back big time. But you're learning a lot more things because we got a long form article that I'm really proud of that we just got out there where people are going to learn reading and right. As a result of reading that article, people are going to make money and feel a lot better about things. So what's the first fight you're going to break down, and we'll have the actual pick on our Substack.
Yeah, up first, we've got the flyweight title bout of Alexander Pantoja versus Joshua Van. So this one is for the championship, and we love Josh Van over here. We've probably been one of his biggest online supporters since
Right.
day one. I mean, when we were talking about him on his come up, it was before his loss to Charles Johnson. Nobody was talking about Joshua Van at that point, and we followed him ever since that. Ever since late 2023, early 2024. We were there before the Charles Johnson fight. We did pick that one against him, unfortunately, and we got that one correct. But since then, we picked him in every single fight, and we picked correctly. I think we picked every fight of his whole career correctly, because usually for him, we picked against him the only time he's lost recently. And yeah, so it'd be really awesome to see Josh Van make that journey from relative unknown to title holder. That being said, he's going to have a very tough time doing that against a very good defensive champion who is Alexander Pantoja and has an incredibly powerful grappling game. So this one, again, another striker versus grappler matchup here
Got
where
it.
Josh Van has very crisp, clean, and powerful boxing, whereas Pantoja can hang on the feet, but he's going to want to take it to the ground and go for that rear naked choke. That's how he's gotten his last two title defenses. And so this one will be real exciting to see. Will Alexander Pantoja maintain his sixth title defense tonight, or will Josh Van explode through the rankings in just a matter of a little over a year and a half? This will be his uh, fourth fight of the year so far, which is a crazy turnaround. Some fighters only fight once a year, if
Right.
that. This will be his fourth one of the year. And so this will be really exciting to see what takes place here.
Big time. Big time. And, the big deal has been the fight between Paramount and Warner Brothers with Netflix. And the big deal where Paramount apparently has lost, but they still feel they're in it, is because they feel they're tight with Trump. And that Trump is going to figure out a way to pull it out for them. And Joshua Van, he's right on the list, whatever happens, of Dana White putting him in that event at the White House. So if you think it's going to go to a decision, right? And we'll have more insight on that on the Substack. But if James thinks it's going to go to a decision, I like the judges to put their toe on the scale for Joshua Van. He's a religious guy, like you said. He's always working out. He shows up. His fights are exciting. He takes chances. That's why he gets hit, right? But he's a striker. So very interesting fight and a lot of insight. And the bottom line is, money talks, bullshit walks. And James's insight has made us money with Josh Van, and and James was there at the beginning. Before, that's a big thing about the podcast, because we're good, have a heightened awareness because of the dopamine center and the brain money is that James is ahead of the game before things happen. What's the next fight? Last
Yeah.
pay-per-view in the Pan National ESPN pay-per-view era.
Yeah. And so for this one, we've got a rematch. We've got Merab Dvalishvili versus Piotr Jan 2. And I'm very excited for this one. I'm very excited that Jan gets a chance to fight for the belt again. I've been waiting years for this. It's very unfortunate that it has to be against Merab, as, like I mentioned, this is going to be a rematch. And the way I'm going to break this down is Piotr Jan, probably the most skilled, technically speaking, fighter on the UFC roster, especially in that division. However, this is a very bad stylistic matchup for him. Piotr Jan has a very good, clean, crisp, high and tight guard. So he's
Right.
incredible on the feet and striking. But that does leave his body open, not only for body shots, but for takedowns, which is Marab's MO. And
Got
the
it.
first time they fought, It was only a 3-round fight, wasn't for a belt or anything like that. So it was a 15-minute, 5-minute rounds, and Merab attempted 49 takedowns over the course of 3 rounds,
Ooh,
which is an absolute insane amount. Most guys attempt 2 or 3 takedowns in a single round, and they're gassed out halfway through the second round. Merab attempted 49, only got 11 of them. So that ratio that he actually landed was horrible. And the times he did, Jan was able to pop right back up. But that's one takedown every 18 seconds, which doesn't seem like a lot. But if you've never wrestled or tried to take someone down,
right,
you don't realize
right.
how much energy that drains. And for Marab to be able
Got
to
it.
do that and maintain that cardio, that's absolutely insane.
Right. So
Technically
he
speak,
has a big lung capacity.
exactly. Yep. He has a third lung. And that, yeah. So Peter Yan, I think he'll do better than he did last time as Marab has developed his other attributes and abilities. Because back then, Marab couldn't strike for shit. But now he can stand and strike a little bit. So I'm not expecting to see him attempt 50 takedowns again. And if he's not attempting 50 takedowns and he's actually on the feet, that actually gives Jan some opportunities to strike with him. So I think Jan will get off some good shots and some good damage here. And he has some potential to lay more than he did last time. Will that change the outcome? Possibly. It's also will be really interesting to see this one go the distance over 5 rounds rather than 3, because
Ooh, right,
Marab
right,
was able to maintain that pace for 3 rounds, but there's no way he can maintain a pace of that for 5 rounds. I mean, he is the machine. He maintains incredible paces, but a takedown every 18 seconds over 25 minutes is a lot different than a takedown every 18 seconds over 15 minutes.
right. And I like your reaction to this because as you're describing that, I thought, but yeah, so trying to take somebody down takes a lot of energy from you. Uh, and I've, practiced boxing or done boxing workouts or boxing people, just sparring. And the few times you do it, you realize how much energy it takes out of you. And the
Exactly.
question for the question for you is: have you done both, and how do they compare to each other? Because they're both exhausting, based on what you said.
Oh, definitely. And it's like that's one of the things that for casual fans or people who don't really watch or practice
Right.
combat sports, they like looking like, oh, it can't be that hard. Like you just go for the legs and take them down. But like even in boxing, like you're mentioning, if you've never boxed before, put on some boxing gloves and just hit the bag for a minute straight and see how tired that makes you. You're gonna be
Right.
like, oh, it's only a minute. It's not that long. But just the constant movement and constant, especially if you're trying to explode and be powerful, incredibly draining. I think takedowns are probably more draining than just striking.
Got it.
But of
Got it. Okay.
course, throwing head kicks are going to be more draining than just jabs. Jabs still going to make you very tired quickly, especially in like your arms, shoulders, triceps. But takedown just a whole body, and it has to be quick if you don't want them to sprawl on you.
Big time. Big time. And then the other thing is somebody's trying to kill you.
Exactly, and they're
So,
trying
so
very hard to not let you take them down.
right. Big time. Man, good stuff. So we're compounding profit. Uh, and my mind's a natural sadness because every time James comes here, it's like he's an ATM. You just put your money in, and you get money out. But it's not going to be long. We got a lot of things going on too. We got bowl season going on, college football, NFL. We're going to profit all of those along with the UFC. So, what are your final thoughts, James? Final pay-per-view on ESPN, one more fight night, and then the big promotions with Paramount.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I wonder what kind of events we're going to see take place since it's going to be the final one. I'm wondering if we're going to see any sort of controversies or boring fights, or because I'm sure they don't want to have too exciting of like too many knockouts in a row or too exciting fights for the last fight. Like they might just kind of phone this one in since
Right.
the contract's about to end anyway. So I'm really excited to see, or if they are just trying to continue to bolster the appearance of UFC to help Paramount gain more subscriptions at the beginning of the year.
Right. And again, the way fighters get paid, it's interesting because that's really going to dictate a lot of what goes on. Because I know this is going to happen for a fact. Somebody's agent's going to be like, hey, man, don't get hurt because we need you for the next time.
Yeah.
This one. All right. So the most expensive advice you can get is bad advice, right? We're transparent. We give you the results, the transparency for us in your best interest. All the other sports betting podcasts and UFC podcasts, nobody goes into detail of what their current record is. You always hear, "Oh, I did this and I got this parlay." Oh, I forgot to ask you, James. What is your now as an MBA, somebody in finance? Parlays are not business. You should never do a parlay. Our parlays are for degenerate gamblers. With that being said, what's your fun parlay?
All right. Let me go grab that for us.
Because that's what the people want. Some people just want parlays and want to have fun. I look at it as a business proposition, but some people want to have fun. But some people look at it both, right? Why not? You got a better chance of winning James's parlay than playing the lottery.
All right. And for this one, I've got Alexander Pantoja to win by submission. I've got Bruno Ferreira to win by decision. And then I've got Mansour Abdul Malik to win by knockout. That brings us to a total of plus 1860.
Plus 1860. Love it. And James's parlay is actually better than people that do horse racing. All right, so there's two ways to go about things. You could kill people, sell drugs, and live a very happy, successful life. Like the president of Honduras who brought in a $500 billion worth of cocaine into the United States and got a pardon. He's going to an island off of Honduras to live well. James and I look at things differently, but we have the same level of success. Salesmen think short term, businessmen and women think long term. Long term thinking is higher level thinking. So we always end with a quote from Winston Churchill, who, through his fireside chats, helped the Western world get through World War II. You make a living from your labor, but you make a life from what you give. Thank you for listening to the SBC Podcast Network. Make sure I got all the streams off because it's going to be the last one. So what do you think, James?
I think that was solid.
Cool. And then I make sure I had all the sound because last time the sound wasn't perfect, but it ended up being perfect on the podcast, and then I just reloaded everything up. But
Oh, okay.
It's good on YouTube.
Awesome.
All right,
Sweet.
man.
All right.
Doing good.
Okay. Yeah.
It's gonna
I'll
be a
catch you
profitable
later.
weekend.
Yeah, I will. And I'll send you those picks for the Substack.
All right, man. And I'm gonna send you right now the first 5 NFL picks, and then I'm gonna do the research podcast for the rest of the NFL picks. So you can invest some money on those on Sunday. 80% chance you're gonna make a lot of money. Almost 100% chance now you're gonna make some money.
Oh, okay. Sweet. I'll catch you
Yeah.
later.
All right, man.